My name is Carlos Lopez, and I work at the Institute for Manufacturing at Cambridge. I'm going to be your moderator for this session. So in the next half an hour or so, we're going to be talking about the topic of industrial safety. As it was just mentioned, it's quite timely to talk about industrial safety because we have this pressing industrial safety challenge. The deaths that was just mentioned, 3 million people dying because of unsafe working conditions. But also, there's a global movement to make sure that industrial safety is really taken on by industry seriously, and that we ensure that safety is a fundamental human right. We have 3 great organizations today in the panel. Because I'm the moderator, I'm going to take, first of all, the liberty of talking a little bit about the work that we are doing with UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and the Lloyd's Register Foundation. I have a little pamphlet here about some of the work that we're doing. And there is an initiative that the 2 organizations together with GMIS are supporting on industrial safety. It's the Global Initiative for Industrial Safety. Now, we are working together in this initiative for the last few months. And the idea is to understand what is the impact of new technologies on the way that companies run operations, what are the new safety risks, and what can we do about it. After this conference, and we are really opening the invitation to you to be part of the initiative as well, we want to involve the private sector, the public sector, and the social organizations as well, to develop together a number of knowledge products, a number of dissemination activities, and we want to organize some discussions focused on industrial safety, bringing the safety and the technology communities together. So really that is an open invitation for you. The first thing that we're going to be working on is a manifesto, and we want to identify the principles that companies should sign up to in order to ensure that they provide a safe environment to the workers. We really have a big problem in front of us because of all these people dying because of unsafe working conditions. I'll stop there, and I would like to introduce the panel, and actually I will ask you if you could introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your organizations, and why are you interested in the topic of industrial safety. Farouk, can I start with you?
Thank you so much, Carlos. My name is Jorge Alimjanov. I represent the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, the organization which is basically a specialized agency of UN dealing with industries, building its competitiveness. So as a mandate of UNIDO, we have a promotion of inclusive and sustainable industrial development, where we're trying to build, revitalize industries, building their competitiveness, so the industries, SMEs, middle and small and micro enterprises in developing countries, in economies of tradition, can play bigger socio-economic role in terms of creating jobs, creating sustainable jobs, creating value addition, creating additional export, diversifying the economies, doing that in environmentally friendly way as well. And I'm very happy also to represent today the division for digital transformation, artificial intelligence strategies. So in doing this global work on industrializing, building competitiveness of industries around the world, we're trying to benefit, capitalize on the latest developments out there in the market. We're trying to introduce the fruits of the fourth industrial revolution in making the industries more competitive. And in this regard, safety, industrial safety, is one of the key components of industries, or of their competitiveness, of their sustainability, of their resilience. So we have to admit that no company will be successful if their workers are injured. So we're very happy that our department is also hosting the topic of industrial safety. And I'm very happy that from a relatively small project that we started in 2018, which basically raised a lot of interest at the international level by GMIS, by our dear partners within this initiative, by Lloyd's Register, a foundation, by private sector, and also which was launched with the support of our key national counterpart, we could have managed to bring this agenda to such a big global platform. I'm happy that we're starting to talk about not only GFIS as the daughter initiative of GMIS, but also talking about the manifesto for the safer world. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for David, could you tell us a little bit more about the foundation and your work there?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Lloyd's Register Foundation. We're a global foundation. We fund research, education, training, and we run sort of large-scale programs and coalitions to try and make the world safer. So our mission is to engineer a safer world. We do that by looking at what the data tells us. So we look at the best evidence, the best insight that we can gather to tell us where there are safety challenges in the world. So we try to focus our efforts on the biggest safety challenges on the planet, but things that we can engineer out. So not natural disasters or acts of God or disease. We're looking for where are there accidents or deaths that are avoidable that we can do something about, either through better technology, through better training, better skills, better regulation, better understanding, better influence, better politics. Whatever it happens to be, we're trying to engineer out the loss of life. And I think our host earlier said there's about 3 million people every year die from work-related fatalities. It's one of the biggest causes of loss of life. And that's not from diseases we can't cure or from natural disasters. Those are things that we can do something about. So those 3 million deaths a year are avoidable. And we can hopefully do something about them if we understand what the problems are. So why are they being caused? And it's a complex problem. We need a systems approach to it. It's not just one thing. We need better regulation. We need better training. We need to understand how people behave in the workplace. And I think particularly there's an issue right now with the pace of change as we adopt new technologies. So as more and more workplaces adopt smart technologies, Industry 4.0 technologies, the pace of change is faster than ever before. And when things are changing very fast, I think people struggle to keep up with it. That's when there is tension in the system. Regulation struggles to keep ahead of that pace of change curve. Training struggles to keep ahead of it. Culture is very slow to change. So I think particularly right now with the introduction of smart technologies, we have a kind of critical issue that we need to look at.
Thank you for that. Himanshu, please, you're coming from the private sector. Can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. Great to be here. So my name is Himanshu Khurana. I'm the VP of Engineering at Industrial Scientific. We are actually a manufacturing company based here in Pittsburgh. When you're driving back to the airport, if you look out 6-7 miles before the airport on the left-hand side, you'll see our building. So just to make a mental check, you make a note of that. And what we do is we manufacture and ship globally industrial safety equipment. This is for personal safety monitoring, area safety monitoring. These are connected IoT systems. And then we use the data and provide software for site safety management, location-based real-time safety monitoring, emergency response, and EHS reporting. So the topic of industrial safety is core to our business, and we think about it a lot. We think about what we need to do to drive improvement and scale. Some of the topics that matter right now are how do we drive more innovation in the area of safety? How do we try to deploy safety solutions that are available at scale? And how do we think about the worker and the safety of that worker? We have an explicit mission of our company to end death on the job by the year 2050. And that's all about really focusing on the outcomes for the worker. That's important to us as well.
That's brilliant. So that really leads nicely to the first question. You mentioned the topic of technology. And of course, I think everybody here is very interested. What is the impact of new technologies on the safety challenge? What are the new problems that we have, but also what are the new solutions? So I was wondering if any on the panel, I'm posing this question to any of you, if you could talk a little bit more about what technologies are coming up, what are the areas of technology that are actually having an influence in the industrial safety discussion and the operations of factories. Where are they coming from, these innovations?
I can start that one, Carlos. So Think of an industrial plant, with a large number of workers, and if the goal is to protect them and their safety, there's some interesting advances that have taken place over the last few years. There was an incident, an unfortunate one, where there were 3 workers working in a plant close to each other, but one was inside the barn. They were wearing safety equipment, their alarm went off, but they succumbed to low oxygen before they could exit the barn. But no one else heard the alarm, no one else could come to the rescue, and unfortunately led to a death. And so, these real-world situations lead to innovation. So now there are solutions which basically use mesh networking so that once you have a group of people, that alarm notification goes to multiple users simultaneously. So now you have a buddy who gets the alarm at the same time and can help you if needed. You take the same connectivity and make it available via cloud. Now the information is available to multiple stakeholders, whether it's emergency response team on site or even remote monitoring, especially relevant for lone workers who may be working alone and they don't have a buddy nearby to help them. You add GPS location to those devices, and now you get visibility of a dot on a map, so you can provide immediate response to what happens and how to build that out. Now that's the connectivity piece. Now imagine that if something happened related to a leak on a plant, there's a hazardous gas leak or a chemical leak that's going on. Now you have modeling and analytics where you can actually see the live flow of the chemical plume on a map along with locations of your people, so you can see how this is dynamically spreading with real-time wind and direction information, and you can get people to the right safety zones, which otherwise is not possible if you don't have that awareness. Right? So, and I think this is all here, this is all being used, though not necessarily at scale. And then it's still early days in what else can be done when you take that data to think about various users. But here are just some examples of things that are here and already helping out.
That's brilliant. And presumably those are applicable or that can be used in all kind of industries.
Absolutely. These are plants that have indoor-outdoor location, that have field sites, that have temporary spaces to work. So I think almost all verticals, whether it's oil and gas, chemicals, utilities, pulp and paper, and factories use these technologies and can benefit from them.
Thank you. As we have more machines connected between themselves and to the internet as well, and we have been discussing in the conference around Industry 4.0 about digital manufacturing. So Farooq, I wanted to pose this question to you. These machines are connected, and that opens up a new safety challenge as well related to cybersecurity. And I know you guys have been doing some work at the United Nations on this topic. Could you share something about the work that you're doing on this area?
Oh, it's, I think, an easy question. Yeah, I mean, the more we get connected, the more we're exposed to the cybersecurity risks, and the same with machinery. The more they're connected, the more they're exposed to cybercrime and cyber attacks. So what we see on the market now, that there is a growing trend that information technologies are being disconnected from operational technology. So the connections are being kept between, let's say, control mechanisms and the shop floor machinery in a limited way. So ensuring there is a minimum connectivity, ensure that so the processes are running smoothly, reliably, sustainably. This is very sounding as a good solution. This might reduce the exposure to the risk. At the same time, it adds a lot upon the complexity. And complexity is something that we have to think about seriously, because it's not that everyone in developing countries, even in developed countries, is ready to absorb this type of complexity. So I think we were discussing, especially yesterday, a lot about this, that we can exploit each other or benefit from each other. I rather prefer the wording to build win-win partnerships, take into account basically capitalizing on this global platform to bring together government, regulatory bodies, private sector, international institutions, international technical support institutions as you need to promote cybersecurity basically for everyone.
Right. And I think we talk a little bit, and Himanshu, you mentioned some of the examples of having new technologies helping us address these security challenges. But of course, as we use some of these technologies, like monitoring, I think you were mentioning monitoring, there are unintended consequences. So I just want to bring the human dimension to this. We have heard, and we have from the work that we've been doing with the organizations represented here, strong message is about the impact on the worker. I wonder whether maybe David could talk a little bit about the human factor, what happens to workers, and how do we ensure that their well-being, including mental well-being, is at the heart of technology adoption?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a few questions in there. I think one of the things we realized about 4 or 5 years ago is that actually one of the things that we were lacking was real evidence, real perspectives from the public all around the world. So from workers, from people that are in workers' families, how do they feel about safety and risk, and what's their personal experience of safety and risk, and how much do they experience harm in the workplace? One of our projects is called the World Risk Poll, which is done by Gallup, and that's we've just done the 2021 poll. It's meant to be representative of about 98% of the world's population. So it's a large poll. In 21, we surveyed 125,000 people in 121 countries. So it's a pretty broad poll. And on workplace safety, I think around a quarter of people, 24% of people surveyed, said that either they had experienced harm in the workplace or somebody close to them had experienced harm in the workplace. So that's a quarter of the entire world's population potentially, which is a huge figure. I think one of the areas that is less understood is how do people interact with new technologies? What is the impact on people, on human beings? I think we're seeing rises in incidences of mental health in the workplace, particularly due to the introduction of new technologies. There's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear. So I think there's this kind of duality of new technology. New technology can be the solution that can make things easier and make things safer. At the same time, technology can have unintended consequences. It can create anxiety, it can create fear, it can create depression in the workplace. And I think we need to balance those two things out a little bit. But the one thing that we realized very early on that we weren't investing enough time and funding in is research, human factors research, to really understand the impact on workers of new technologies.
Yeah, I mean, I could add that. I fully agree with everything you said, David. Case in point, right? If you, from a technical perspective, location helps us improve safety outcome, because if someone is in trouble, we can get help to them in a quick and timely manner. But that same location awareness can lead to potential concerns on the part of the workers, where they might be wondering if you're tracking them, right? And that's not a desirable outcome in and of itself. So I think that's just one example, but in the better scenarios, we see these large plants and customers who are aware of these issues. They create pilot programs where they have workers participate in jointly evaluating technologies to actually understand the human factors aspect and talk about these issues openly in a forum, saying that we do need to navigate them together, but new technology is required to improve safety at the next level. And I think, so done right, those are the ways to go about try to deploying it. But I think more research on human factors aspects would be welcome in the industry. Perhaps we don't do enough of that to model the behavior, to model the expectations. And just like we have changing workforce in so many industries post-pandemic, this area is not immune, right? So there is more transient workforce and more workforce coming in with lower level of previous experience in these environments. So now you're having to support organizations that need to train them faster, and yet get productivity outcomes without impacting safety negatively.
Farooq, would you like to add something?
Maybe a little bit to add, just to back up the idea of really promoting participatory approach in discussing well-being and safety of workers at the company level. So yeah, we have to admit that those who are most exposed to the risks, safety risks, are those who are having, they're without a say in the company's fortune. So basically, their well-being, their health, their safety could be thought of but not prioritized. So indeed, it would be essential to build up the safety culture in the companies where this participatory approach is being practiced. When we're sitting together with the workers, we're talking about different aspects of safety, of well-being, but also let us talk about economic success, economic basically competitiveness of the company. So all these factors are taken into account, because any safety topic might be of additional transition cost to the company. So it is important to promote this type of togetherness of joint decision making, and this must be, I think, a default mechanism in each company.
And Himanshu, you mentioned that we are still at the beginning of technological development applied for this industrial safety challenge. And obviously many of the solutions might not come from industry or the traditional industries themselves. So how are you seeing the interaction, this togetherness between manufacturing industries and perhaps the startups and innovators from other sectors? How is this taking place? And in which areas do you see more activity?
Yeah, no, I think it's actually quite exciting to see an increased amount of venture investment and startup investment going in the area of safety. There is recognition of the scale of the problem and how multiple areas of technology can help. So, for example, with the systems that we deploy and manage, we generate a lot of data. We're starting to do some research of that on our own to look at things like exposure modeling and be able to predict outcomes. But we are seeing startups focus a lot on workers, for example, in areas of vital signs monitoring. So you can go out there to see people investing in whether it's an armband or a wristband that starts to do vital signs monitoring, and that can help predict heat stress and other issues and help take out the workers in a timely manner before anything negative happens. So that's an interesting area of focus. Another area of investment focus is kind of what I talked about earlier, is real-time location systems to help bring easily available information, whether it's indoors or outdoors. So it's seamless GPS outdoors to something else that's indoors. So you have a full idea of location systems that's to happen. And third is investment in platforms, cloud platforms that allow you to help manage all that data and be able to integrate information from multiple safety systems for a unified view and unified perspective. We engage with a lot of startups in understanding where they're going. We help bring together pilot projects where it makes sense. And we think this is a problem that can be best solved with a broader focus on safety technologies.
And David, I'd like to bring you in here because the foundation has been working, supporting startups, and you have a number of initiatives working on this issue. Fascinating things coming out. The startups, I've seen some drones companies there for high altitude inspection. Can you tell us a little bit more about how are you bringing this open innovation concept?
Yeah, I think so about 4 or 5 years ago, we talked to a lot of big players, particularly in the shipping sector, and we realized that the issue for them was not that they didn't care about safety innovation, but they didn't have the entrepreneurs, the innovators, the startups in their supply chain that they could take their challenges to, take their issues, take their problems and say, look, we've got a problem here. We need something that will help us solve it. What can we do? Can we harness some of these new types of technology to actually apply it to this particular problem? So we set up a safety tech accelerator. And what we've been trying to do is get this concept of safety tech innovation, of safety tech just as an area to attract more people in, because there just aren't enough innovators, enough entrepreneurs, enough startups working in the supply chain of almost all sectors to come up with safety tech innovation. There's a lot of young entrepreneurs going into fintech, but we'd like them to actually go into safety tech or think about applying some of their ideas or creating new ideas to come into safety tech. So that's where the idea for the Lloyd's Register Safety Tech Accelerator came from. It's very challenge-led. We partner with a Silicon Valley company called Plug and Play, and they give us the access to big communities of entrepreneurs and tech startup people. We take to them challenges. So we work with large companies in different sectors to say, okay, what are your safety challenges? Where are you experiencing loss of life? Where are you experiencing accidents? What's happening? What are your problems? We take those problems in a kind of challenge environment. So we set challenges, and then we work with our partners to try and reach out to entrepreneurs, to innovators, just to young people working in technology, in media, in communications, whatever area it happens to be. And I think we've had quite a lot of success in generating new ideas and new safety tech innovations, and then just helping support those in the early stages. But hopefully, if they're successful, they'll be taken on as part of the supply chain in those companies and those industries. So it doesn't necessarily need a lot of funding. As you said, we're starting to see more venture capital, I think, get into this area. But also, a lot of companies are noticing that they have this lack in the supply chain, and they're more than happy to actually support that kind of innovation.
Yeah, I mean, so Farouk, some of the comments that some people during this work that we've been collaborating with you, there was a strong concern about how ready are developing countries to take on these innovations, how relevant it might be to those countries as well. What are your thoughts on how can we make those innovations available to developing countries?
Well, just to back up the previous speakers on how important role innovation and entrepreneurship is actually playing in making this world safer. Just also to say that safety tech is already a multi-billion business around the world, and as we speak, it continues generating new technologies, and these technologies will make the industries even safer. So, indeed, I mean, it's the matter of readiness to absorb this innovation. What we can actually basically promote, I think there is a big room for innovation to be promoted in organizational thinking, organizational management, in change making, change management. So also to help those countries lagging behind to introduce new technologies in safety area and other areas. What UNIDO is basically doing is also trying to build hubs, and this is a new trend of building hybrids, or let's say virtual hubs, for promoting the startups, but also scale-ups in the thematic areas in health tech, in fintech, in industrial startups, but also a growing interest is to invest more efforts to the health tech. I mean, at least what we can think of introducing new technologies in mining sector would largely reduce the exposure of this industry to the industrial injuries, etc. What else we can do is also to promote entrepreneurial spirit in reducing the risks and in products, in production cycle, in the processes. So just to imagine, just to see, and to basically we're witnessing how innovation entrepreneurship already played a huge role in making the products that we consume nowadays ever better. And I would just realizing how many harmful materials, spare parts, ingredients we could have replaced by safer, healthier materials and ingredients and spare parts. So I would only advocate for really further development and promotion of entrepreneurial spirit, entrepreneurial thinking, entrepreneurial skills and innovations in safety for products, for production, and for people.
So we talk a little bit now about opening innovation, accelerating innovation, but then of course the other aspect is the adoption. So Himanshu, I wanted to just get your thoughts on what can be done by the private sector to accelerate things, to accelerate the adoption. What are the challenges that companies face when making these decisions? And if you have some examples of these challenges to the adoption as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think in some areas, technology has great challenges in safety to overcome. So, for example, one thing is our organizations see these low probability, high impact events. And there aren't very good technical solutions for that, right? That's an area where you need to keep pushing the forefront of innovation to go figure out how to address these. On the other hand, there's a lot of good technology available that is not being adopted at the scale that it could. And I feel like that adoption could be a strong public-private partnership where we create some best practices. If you look at some of the best practices, literature and recommendations for safety, they tend to be more behavior and training oriented. They need to be more people and process oriented. We could have more guidance that includes technology as a major enabler, perhaps supported by reference architectures, supported by reference examples of success to build that out. And I think things like defined maturity curves or maturity paths so that people can see that, okay, they have a solution that meets basic compliance, but now they can adopt a second level that has a higher outcome and then keep going in that journey. And I do know that many of the industries, many of our customers take safety very seriously. And they are very disappointed when there is a near miss or an event that they have to go study and do that. And they always look for sort of the next barrier to overcome in the whole process. So those are something that could help with the adoption.
Would you like to add something, David, on adoption and accelerating the process?
I think I think I said this earlier. It's a complex system. So the answer here is not technology. It's a complex system of technology, training, skills, guidance, regulation, culture, and we often forget the culture bit. We talked about culture earlier being incredibly important, but actually that's the bit that sometimes is quite hard to get right, and nobody quite knows how to do that. Nobody quite knows how do you change the culture of an organization? How do you shift it to the culture you need to make people safer? It's easier to address the skills thing, the education thing, the technology thing. So I think there are bits of this system that sometimes get overlooked that we need to make sure we have that whole system approach to get the answer right.
And I think you mentioned the issue, Himachon, of data sharing and best practice sharing. I don't know if anyone in the panel would like to say something around the issue of data privacy, first of all, but also what can be done. Because companies obviously it could be sensitive information on near misses, for example. And we have seen, and during our consultations, people worry that companies might not be open to share this information with their peers, but it's incredibly important, as you're saying. But what can be done to actually incentivize that sharing of information around lessons learned, near misses? What can be done next?
I've got a small example, which is a project that we're doing with the Health and Safety Executive in the UK, so the government regulator, who gathers all the data, particularly on things like near misses. And we've got a project called Discovering Safety, where they're developing new algorithms to try and use that data. It's mostly anonymized, so there are no real privacy issues. So it's anonymized data to develop better algorithms to actually spot incidents before they happen. And they've already shown some quite good early successes in actually being able to predict things before they've happened, things that we weren't sure would happen based on that data. So I think actually there's quite a lot of things that we can do with anonymized data. It doesn't necessarily have to be sort of personal. So I think that Discovering Safety program that is being run by the HSE is a really interesting one. It's a highly innovative program. It's in its early days. But I think the HSE suddenly realized that they've got 10, 20, 30 years of historic data there, and they weren't really doing anything with it. And actually that is a huge repository for innovation.
I fully agree with David that there's plenty to be had with adequate anonymity that can still create value, but also a lot of the reporting is required by regulation. There are a lot of events that are either near misses or a recordable incident that did not lead to a significant outcome, and those are reported to agencies as a requirement. I think if there is a way to collect that information and use that for studying, that itself would help move a lot of things forward.
would you like to add something on sharing, Farooq? Because obviously you've been involved in the global initiative for industrial safety, and there is an ambition there to build a database, really a registry of best practices as well. How do you think this could actually be implemented globally, and especially thinking about the needs of the developing countries as well?
Well, indeed, we're here happy to capitalize on best experience of promoting industrial safety worldwide, learning from the private sector, learning from different countries, but also happy to share, to compile this experience, to share the best practices. We're not here only to preach, but we're also trying to develop public goods, and we're happy to share that with developing countries jointly with our partners. It's interesting that I think in 1 year we issued 3 guidelines on ISO 45001 and ISO 56001. It's respectively the occupational health and safety management system and innovation management system. So we're happy to develop those together with ISO and promote these tools everywhere in the world. As you know, recently we also concluded our industrial safety project by issuing guidelines to SMEs everywhere in the world on industrial safety and security, which are translated in all 6 languages, and they're publicly available. So we're happy to extend this experience by building within the GFIS initiative a knowledge hub. I mean, we have our knowledge hub, but we are happy to share that experience as well, of basically trying to make this world indeed safer by distributing this knowledge everywhere. And I'm really calling for the partners to join this initiative, to share your best experience in different sectors of how to make the world safer, how to build safer practices for the people, for environment, for your industries, for your companies.
Brilliant. That's a great. I think we're reaching the end of the session now. Unless there's any pressing question from the audience, I think I would just like to open the floor for final comments. If anybody wants to highlight what are the next steps in this topic.
No, thank you for arranging this discussion. I think we see safety as a key part of sustainability, right? We cannot have a sustainable future if you don't have a safer future. So I think we need to continue the dialogue and work to be done, and the opportunities are tremendous, whether it's focus on people, policy, technology, or process. And I think more exciting things to come.
I think my message would be that we just need more ideas. We need more ideas, we need more innovators, more entrepreneurs, more young people to come up with ideas for how we can actually address some of these safety challenges.
Well, maybe I will use this opportunity to thank our partners, GMIS and also Lloyd, Bridges Foundation, other partners who joined us within this initiative and to brought us to such a intercontinental level. Now we discussed it. We launched the GFIS in Dubai. We started this initiative in Vienna, and now we're discussing it on the American continent. So our next step, and just to directly reply to a question, would be to hopefully jointly finalize the manifesto, this global document, global principles, to really contribute to make this world and industry in this world safer.
So that's a great way to finalize this session. Thank you so much for joining, and we are now going to give the floor to the next session. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos.
Thank you.